Hey, this is Jonathan Smith. I'm coming to you to talk to you about emergency paid leave. It seems like right now, emergency paid leave is more difficult than it should be. But before I get into my comments, let me say something real quick. Please don't misconstrue my comments to encourage or discourage anyone from taking emergency paid leave, because I do understand that a lot of people need this leave. But I want you to understand that my comments is, please be honest in your request for this leave, because this is a very serious situation. This was not negotiated between the postal union and the post office. This was the federal government that established a fund for federal employees to deal with certain qualifying conditions to help them get through the COVID pandemic. Therefore, these forms that OPM and the government is requiring you to fill out are government forms. You will be lying on a government form. If you lie on a government form, them going after reimbursement of the money is the least of your problems. They will look to remove you if they catch you lying on this form to get erroneous funds that you should not have gotten. You need to know that. This is not no game, because I've had situations where people said they had no child care and they out there on the beach taking pictures and putting them on Facebook. Come on now. Let's talk real quick about what's required in the emergency paid leave. All right, the first thing that you're going to get this form. This is your request form. On the top, it says COVID-19 Emergency Federal Employee Leave. This is where you're going to request the leave. This form is very important because you will fill this form out. And once you fill this form out in its entirety, because it is 3 pages to this form, and if you fill it out in its entirety, it will answer most of the questions that is required for you to qualify for emergency paid leave. So you will just check off in the first section, what is your qualifying condition. You'll say the length of time that you're going to be out. You have to put your initials in there, read it very careful, and attest to those things. Then on the next page, you'll go to each qualifying condition and what you need. Now, when you put the instruction down there, like it says, well, who was the doctor? That means you're going to have to provide them a doctor's note. You just can't say, oh, I put the doctor's name. No, you got to get a doctor's note saying that you got COVID. If it's saying, where's the virtual learning, the name of the school, you got to give the school and says virtual learning. Now, the law does say, it could say that they have in-person learning and virtual learning, and you choose virtual learning. It says the Postal Service cannot deny this leave because you chose virtual learning over in-person learning. They're not going to take that right from a parent to feel safe about where their child is at. Now, some of the mistakes that I'm seeing that's happening is that people are putting in for the leave and they're just saying child care. You must relate, I don't care what the qualifying condition is, to a COVID-related issue, meaning child care. My child's school is closed due to the COVID pandemic. You just related it to COVID. You qualify. My child care provider, it doesn't have to be a professional. It don't have to be a nursery. It could be my aunt was watching my child. My aunt do not feel comfortable coming over due to the COVID virus to be around children or to come to my house or leave her house. That's a COVID-related condition. And you can get that for child care. But you must relate it to COVID. Now, one of the other things that I see that there's a little bit of a problem, the virtual learning. OPM says virtual learning is covered for the hours that the virtual learning is in process. Meaning if virtual learning is from 8 to 3 and you got to be to work at 5, you're not covered. You got to go to work at 5. I know a lot of people say, well, how I'm going to sleep? Well, you need to yell at the government because I agree with you, but they didn't make provisions for your sleep. They made provisions for the hours that you needed to be there for your child. You would have to go to work under that situation. Now, if you have virtual learning and it's from Monday to Friday and you normally work Saturday, Sunday, you got to go to work. Those are your normal and regular hours. Other people saying, well, would I get my overtime if I regularly worked overtime? And would I get my Sunday premium? I'm not even going to go into detail. No. It says you get up to a total of 2,800 hours total. You get 80 hours, period. That's what OPM says. And if you're a PSE, it says you will get the average of your previous 13 weeks, pay periods, 13 pay periods of pay, whatever that average was, is what you would get. So if you're a PSE and you've been out all the last year, you haven't accumulated any work hours, and they look at the average, you can put in for the emergency paid leave, but once they average it out, it's not going to be much there to pay you. Now, if you've been continuously working for the last 10, 13 weeks and now EFEL, now you're looking at a decent check. You might even be looking at 80 hours if they was regularly working you 80 hours every 2 weeks. Now, the next thing that you're going to have to fill out is this waiver. This waiver that they send you, basically what it says is, I understand that if the fund that the federal government has set up for emergency paid leave is exhausted, then my leave immediately stops and I must reimburse the Postal Service. And if they can't get reimbursed for it, because OPM, that's why the Postal Service has to be careful, because the OPM got to make sure that they have all the paperwork to submit to OPM, because the OPM rejects it, the Postal Service is going to come back and go after their money because OPM did not reimburse them. So act as though you're writing this documentation to OPM and not to your supervisor, because they will be scrutinizing it too to make sure you fully met and qualified for that condition that you're documenting. So when you sign this waiver says, hey, but then they went on to say this. They said that you can even ask for retroactive pay. They're saying that if you had something going on in early April of March and you wanted EFEL, and your supervisor said, no, you're not gonna qualify for that, and you was forced to use annual, write a statement saying that happened and you want EFEL now, and they can pay you retroactively. Or you was forced to take leave without pay, they could take that leave without pay period and pay you emergency paid leave. You can make the request retroactively. But you have to document it properly. Now, the next part you're going to go to is the 3971. And I just can't believe some of the horrors I've seen in the 3971. Everybody that looked at the 3971 sees it's like a 2-week period, 80 hours that you can put on the 3971. And we got people handing the 3971 600 hours, 400 hours, 300 hours. No. First of all, I would advise you only to take it in 80-hour increments anyway. That way, if the fund gets exhausted, they're not waiting for you to exhaust 200 hours. They go to get 200 hours reimbursed, and now there's no money there, and you owe 200 hours. But if you put it in 80 hours, and the fund is exhausted, you only want 80. So what you do is, say you want 200 hours, because it's your right to ask for 200 hours. You fill out a 3971, 80 hours. You fill out another 3971, that's 80 and 8, that's 160 hours. And then you fill out another 3971 for 40 more hours, and now you got the 200 hours. And you take all of those 3971s and submit it with the rest of the documents that I gave you. It gives you the right to do self-certification. What is self-certification? Meaning you write a description of what's going on, why you're unable to work because of this qualifying condition, what the qualifying condition is, and how it's related to COVID. And then you just sign it. No supervisor has a right to ask you for a birth certificate, a notarized letter. That's improper. It also goes on to say that the Postal Service can ask for additional reasonable documentation. What is reasonable documentation? Meaning, if you're saying that the babysitter that you normally and regularly use is not available, and they don't feel comfortable coming over due to COVID-related disease because they got underlying conditions or whatever it is, however you want to write it, and you go back to the Postal Service and they say, I want a doctor's note from your baby. They don't have to give the Postal Service. They don't work for the Postal Service. You do. It's an unreasonable request to want a doctor's note. Now, it's not unreasonable to want their name, and be careful with that, because they might say, okay, they give it to the inspectors, and the inspectors go look up that name, and they go, I ain't never watched their child. And you get caught lying. So that was basically me walking through this, giving you a quick tutorial. I'm trying to think if there's anything very, very important that I missed, but I don't think so. I didn't want to get into the qualifying conditions because I know management is watching. Anything that you give them medically related has to be kept in a separate folder, and the same rules apply. If it has a diagnosis or a prognosis, that might have to go to the medical unit or something, but I don't know where that would be necessary under a COVID-related situation. But you might be more susceptible because you had surgery due to some sort of cancer and stuff like that, and you don't want to divulge that information and need to go to then you have a right to give that in a sealed envelope and make sure it goes to the appropriate people only that can evaluate that situation and approve that situation. So basically, that's a quick tutorial without me being too long on what is required. I would advise you to go to your shop store, get the cheat sheet. The cheat sheet will walk you through a lot of this stuff. It'll tell you what your rights is. It'll tell you what documents are needed. It'll also tell you that management cannot simply deny your leave. What it says in the OPM regulations, it says, if the documentation is found insufficient, management must inform you what documentations would be sufficient and give you an opportunity to provide that documentation prior to denying the leave. Management is not doing that. They're just seeing it and then denying it. But also one of the mistakes that I'm seeing, you can't send documentation in that you took a picture of and you screenshot it. And that, come on now, who's going to accept that? What agency that you're going to go to that's going to accept something being screenshot and stuff? And now you try to send stuff in through the fax machine. But the thing is, you don't know if it's a good fax machine. And if that 3971 comes through or your documentation comes through that fax machine and it's not clear, it also, and this is very important, says that if you can't deliver it, you have a right to, the union can give it to hand it in for you. A co-worker can hand it in for you that's close to you and stuff like that. It does not require that you specifically, but you have to make sure that they get the documentation. Maybe call in and ask for email so you can make sure the copies of what you're giving them is clear. Because I've seen some of this stuff that's going in and it's not very clear, and I wouldn't be able to approve it either. So you need to, it's best to make sure that you bring it in yourself, because who's the best witness than you? Then you went in and you handed it in such and such hand. And here's the other thing. I got people wanting to put in for leave, claim they put in for leave and they were denied, and they don't keep a copy. Keep a copy of everything that you give management. You should not give them a 3971 and you don't have a copy. You should not send a waiver in and you don't have a copy. You should not send in the request for the qualifying condition and you don't have a copy. Why should I have to go to management to get a copy of your request? Keep copies of everything that you supply management. Make sure you know the name of the individual that you gave it to. So you can so when it has to be traced, it could be easier. I could put in, how am I going to put in an information request for $39.71 and they say they don't have it and you don't have it, then how do I prove that you even requested it? Help me help you. And this thing will go a lot smoother. We have put information out there again. You might not be getting it. If you're not on New York Metro email blast, if you're a New York Metro member, call the office, 1-212-563-7553. That's 1-212-563-7553. Talk to the receptionist that answers the phone. Tell her your name, your station, and the other pertinent information that she's going to ask for, so she can put you on the members-only email blast, and you would have already had this cheat sheet so you could know your rights. Members have privileges. So I thank you to the next time we get to talk. I hope that I covered a lot of your questions, even though I didn't go through it specifically because it would have took way too much time. And next time I put a Zoom invite out. I put a Zoom invite out to all the members. Not a lot of people took advantage of that. I don't know if I'm going to have the time to do it again, but look out for it. If I do decide, if I do carve out some time to be able to do it again, I would love to see you there. I would love to answer any question that you might have. Until the next time we have to talk, God bless and ciao.